there's always been this one thing that's always been on my mind. And some people think that when I talk about it and when I discuss it, the way I think is different from everybody else. But I want you to be the judge of that when I tell you what we're going to talk about. Now, we're talking about trust with your partner. And I'm going to tell you what my point of view is. But before we get there, make sure you like, subscribe, and you share our content. Also, make sure you go ahead and visit our brand store at FarewellMNG.com. Now, let's get into it. When I think about trust, and I think about trust in my partner, I think about trust in relationships, I think about trust in friends and everything, I always feel like you should always just put your first foot forward, right? So when I meet somebody, I trust them up front. So in a relationship, I trust them up front. Now, I know there are some people that say that they trust on the back end. You gotta earn their trust. You gotta work for their trust. I just feel like that's going out the world backwards. Like, if I gotta earn your trust, that means that you already think that I'm gonna lie to you. I'm already that I'm gonna deceive you and everything. So it's like I'm already trying to I'm fighting up an uphill battle. Okay. So let's kind of just look at these things. Y'all tell me whether y'all do it the way I do it, which is you put trust in the front, or you want the people that put trust on the back end. Now, here's ways to kind of build that foundation of trust if you don't do it like me, where you put it in on the front end and you put it in the back end. So one thing we know that trust involves levels of communication. That's regular, open, and honest conversation, time in and time again. And some that will involve like talking about how your day is, talk about some of the things that's going on in your life, past stories and everything. But don't let me get too far ahead of myself. But what does trust look like in a relationship? Trust is that firm belief in your partner's reliability, trustfulness, and emotional safety. The confidence that will act in your best interest even when you're not looking. So if somebody talking jump behind your back, you expect that person to step up and defend you and say, hey, you can't talk like that. Them words you spewing ain't good words to be spewing. But you would think that person had a good interest in you. Reliability, how reliable they are. Do they show up when you need them to? Not just financially, but they show up when you need emotionally as well. You're having a hard day, you need somebody to lean on. Are they showing up in those type of ways? For me, reliability is probably one of the best things that I can offer, because I'm always there. I'm always on time. Unless something happen like a car accident or traffic, but I'm always there. I pride myself on reliability and truthfulness. We go back to communication. That's another big thing, is how consistent is communication. I always hear certain people always talk about this person wasn't consistent. Sometimes we would talk and then sometimes we go days without talking, or sometimes they would show up and then other times they wouldn't show up. So how good is their communication? Are they communicating with you consistently? Outside of good mornings and good nights, how is the other communication? Are they telling you things about themselves and they being open and vulnerable with you? Are they sharing things about their past that they may be uncomfortable telling everybody else, so they confide in you? These are some things that that kind of gets you to understand the kind of person that you're dealing with, and you kind of feel confident in the things that they're telling you, and they're not telling you no lies or anything. And sometimes you could be dealing with somebody that is telling you this stuff, but not being so truthful or forthright. So we have to take sometimes, and I'm not saying you have to do it all the time. Sometimes maybe I'm doing it wrong. People be lying. But you gotta take some things with people from a grain of salt until they can show you that they're trustworthy, and they can own up to it. They can put that measure in place to say, yes, this person is reliable. Now, I have a few friends in my circle that I deem to be unreliable. I mean, I have people that's outside my circle that are to be deemed reliable. You know, you got the three rings of circles. You got the people that's real close, you got the people that's like sort of kinda, and then you got the associates on the outside. And you know, sometimes, you know, some of them other people are more reliable. It just depends on where they at that point in time in their life where they can be available. Because I know some people that we the same age, but they don't have no car, or they have a car and they ain't got no license. So if I end up in an accident, I know I can't call this person because they can't come look out for me. Now, when we talked a little bit about vulnerability and emotional safety. Now, I know that for some, if not all guys, that it is a lot more difficult to be vulnerable in relationships than it is to it's not easy to be vulnerable in relationships than it is for some ladies. So that's another thing. Like, can you feel vulnerable? Can you feel safe? Do you feel confident that this person can handle your emotions? They can handle who you are and everything. And that's hard because I can trust you, but I may not want to be vulnerable with you. I may not want to be able to trust you with my heart, trust you with my emotions, because sometimes they can be abused, they can be manipulated, they can be a lot of things. And you want to safeguard yourself as much as possible, especially in the beginning. Now, as I stated in the beginning of this conversation, that I will put my trust up front, but it doesn't come without its safeguards. It doesn't come without its measures. So yes, I am putting my trust in you, but I'm only putting my trust in you so far as I can throw you. So I'm not going to trust you with my emotion. I'm not going to trust you with a lot of things, but I'll put my trust in you so far as I know you're not cheating. I know you're not lying to me. I trust you tell me that if you say you at home, I trust that you're at home. I'm not going to ask for your location, send me a picture. None of that stuff. Like, is this your real picture? Like, take a newspaper, take it to the next newspaper and take a picture of yourself and send it to me. Like, I'm going to put more trust in the small decisions, but not necessarily into trusting with my emotions and everything else that go along with that. Now, is the person accountable? Can they take accountability? And I know this is kind of like a big conversation when it comes to some ladies about accountability. Women do not take accountability. But, you know, you have some men that don't take accountability. They can shift the blame. They can do a lot of that stuff. And there's women too. So it happens on both sides of the aisle. Okay? It's not a whole bunch of men, but it's definitely a whole bunch of women. It's some women that take accountability. So it's kind of like a mixed bag there. So I'm not saying, you know, who doesn't, who does, none of that stuff. But it does happen. So do they take accountability? You know, do they respect boundaries? Okay? And y'all know I talk about boundaries a lot. You know, boundaries is a very big thing when it comes to trust. Like, I do the show. So if I'm dating, you know, at the point in time that I'm dating, hey, I need somebody to understand that, hey, this is what I'm doing on the podcast. I need you to understand that boundary. Like, don't interfere with what I'm doing here. It's the quickest way to find yourself to the door. Like we're not gonna play that. There is a fine line of boundary between my work and my personal life. Like, this is my work. Don't cross that boundary. So now there are some things that we also need to look at as well. So there are some early warning signs of trust that could be eroding, okay? And this have happened in relationships, especially when it comes to divorce, especially when it came to the pandemic and a few other things. Now, here are some early warning signs that I just want to throw out there so you can go ahead and look at. Withholding information. No, not telling you everything. Omitting information. Yeah, I went to my mom's house and then I came over here, but not mentioning that, yeah, I stopped at my homeboy house. There was some girls over there. Or was a situation that occurred over there, and anything else that follows that. So withholding information, diminished emotional intimacy. You know, not touching each other not so much, not being very intimate, and you kind of see that in relationships that are starting to come apart. Is that they're not romantic. You know, I can tell you one time I was dating this young lady and she wanted to spend New Year's Eve together. I told her no. I didn't want to spend New Year's Eve together. Then followed behind that with Valentine's Day, and I didn't want to do anything for Valentine's Day. So the communication started to erode, and the intimacy started to erode. So, and I started withholding information, like I was doing other things that I wasn't telling them. And it's because I was no longer invested and involved in the relationship, and I kind of seen that the relationship was kind of falling apart. So I kind of just walked away from it altogether. I was like, you know what? I was still in the relationship, but not necessarily in the relationship. And the times that I tried to communicate and make it better, it just wasn't working. How do you not have a full conversation with somebody for a whole week? Then you go on a date and say, hey, what's been happening? I know we haven't really been talking because I've been doing this and you've been doing that, so we haven't really been having a chance to actually have a conversation. What's been going on? And they can't even tell you what has happened over the last 7 days. Like, you're trying to make an attempt to have the conversation, but they can't even fulfill the conversational needs at that point in time while you're on the date. So then you're just having a empty date. Like, there's no conversation. There's nothing. Like, you could feel the energy from the date. It's just gone. I'm in my eye. You could just feel energy from the date. It's just gone. It's lapsed. Passive aggressive behavior. Just, oh man. Avoiding direct communication, expressing frustration through subtle signs, subtle deeds and withdrawals. Yeah, I experienced that too. Even when I was on a date that I had just mentioned, I experienced like little clapbacks and everything. Like, why are you clapping at me? Like, we're supposed to be on a date and everything, having a good time, and you're making like little quips and everything. Like, it'd be bad. It'd be bad. Now, a lot of this stuff can happen. And so it's two things here. So a lot of this stuff can happen and the relationship is eroding. A lot of this stuff can be good and you still don't really understand what the other person is doing. So I also want to talk about building trust after infidelity. So what we talked about previous is if you're looking at the warning signs for when a relationship is kind of eroding and you're kind of losing trust, building trust in the beginning and some of those things. But how do you build that trust back after infidelity? How do you build that trust back? If you want to build that trust back, if you even have faith that this relationship is going to be stronger after. Now, I have known people in relationships and marriages to go through a infidelity. Either the husband has cheated, the wife has cheated, they have cheated on each other, and they're still trying to build on that relationship. And I always wondered myself is, how is that possible? How do you build on a relationship when both partners have committed adultery, or one party has committed adultery, but is still committed to building this relationship? Has always just been, phenomenally interesting to me. So my understanding is when a man cheats, it's primarily physical. It has nothing to do with, they're not even emotionally attached to the woman. It's primarily physical. When a woman cheats, it's emotional first, and then it's the physical. Now, ladies, you can definitely chime in and let me know if it's different for you. Maybe you just seen a nice looking dude and it was primarily physical for you, and you just like, hey, let me, and keep it moving. So, but y'all let me know. I'm interested to know how that shapes out. So, there's some steps after discovery, emotional triage and therapeutic support. Okay. So, immediate steps to manage overwhelming feelings and stabilize the relationship before diving into the solution. So sometimes you just gotta, you gotta sort your feelings out to get an understanding. some people can dive right into the conversation, dive right into the argument, and try to find a solution. But sometimes you just need to walk away. You need to walk away and have the and not have the conversation with other people, but just walk away and just try to sort out your emotions, sort out your thoughts, and then come back to the table and have a conversation. But then we also have therapeutic support. So maybe y'all should go see a counselor. Once it's all said and done, once you get past the emotional piece and you actually gain an understanding, maybe you go and you have the conversation with a therapist if you want to have the conversation. Now, I remember years ago, I knew a guy. We used to work at the basketball gym together, and him and his girlfriend dated for a year, but they was having issues. And interestingly enough, they lived together, and they went to therapy. And I told him, I said, bro, why don't y'all go to therapy? And he was like, well, you know, we both want to be in this relationship. Some things that we got to iron out and we can't do it ourselves. And I was like, bro, that's your girlfriend. Like, I know people that do that in marriages. I didn't know people did that for girlfriends. Like, technically, you're still single. You just made a verbal commitment to the relationship. So he was like, well, I really want to be here. She want to be here. So we're going to therapy and we're trying to figure it out. So I don't know if they're still together. I don't know if they got married. I don't know too much of anything. But one thing that I learned from that is that people that want to be together will try things to be together. Whether it's going to therapy, whether it's, counseling, which is pretty much the same thing, or whatever. They're going to try things to stay together, which I found interesting. So, if you're in a relationship and you're having a hard time, go to therapy. Go to therapy. Because clearly therapy, you can go to therapy at any level of a relationship. Even before marriage, before you even get engaged, do therapy. It'll be great. No worries. Now, the unfaithful partner. Now, it's some things that, if we go back to accountability, that the unfaithful partner must do. And, for the women that have the emotional side first, I guess you have to take that but you have to take that time to figure out what's really going on in your relationship for you to have emotional ties to somebody else. And you have to stop there. And that's when you have to make a decision. Is this something that I want, or something that I want to walk away from? And those are two different things. So for the unfaithful partner, whether it's the man or the woman, is full ownership and honesty. You have to admit that the affair and all associated behaviors without blaming the other partner or downplaying the damage. You have to be honest with it. No matter how hard it's going to be. On one of the Pop the Balloons that I review, a guy has said that, would you lie to keep the person, or would you tell the truth to see if the person keeps you? And I think this is very applicable to that situation. You have to tell the truth to see if that person is going to keep you. And if that person is not going to keep you, then that means that there may be somebody out there that is better suited for you in the time that you are. Like in a growth position, in a position that you are now, because you're not the same person you were when you met this person. You didn't grow some, you didn't change, you became more knowledgeable, you have became more seasoned, you have became older. So you're not the same person you were when you met this person. So what that means is that now you are more, you're better. And knowing that if you have outgrown this relationship, then maybe it's time for you to go and invest and grow into a new relationship. That is a possibility, because some people don't grow together, they grow apart. And it's okay to grow apart as long as everybody understands in a relationship and say, we grew apart, and maybe this is our sign to either come together and see where our differences kind of fail and where we kind of fell out of the relationship, or to split up and go our separate ways. It can happen. And that's kind of how infidelity kind of happens. Well, not really. Some people just want to go out and cheat. And then some people that's just not getting the things that they want out of relationships, so then they go out and cheat. So, a lot of those things can happen. But also for the unfaithful partner is complete transparency, again, empathy and accountability, taking those. So while we're looking at this, you see that there's something that each partner can do to kind of remedy, this hurtfulness if you're going to do this after infidelity. So what the other partner has to do, they have to take time to themselves and protect themselves emotionally. They have to process this. It's not, now the other party may want just to happen overnight, like, hey, I made a mistake, can we just go ahead and get back to it? But that's not how it always happens. So sometimes the other person just needs time and just process what happened. They may have more questions and they need honest answers to be able to get through this and process it 100% through. Not only that, reassurance. Reassurance through actions. Like, you gotta be able to reassure them. Like, sometimes you gotta go through this trend. You may have to over communicate. You may have to, on days or nights where you want to go hang out with the boys, sometimes it's best to just stay home. Going back on dates. There's a lot of little things that you have to do to kind of build that trust back. And once trust is lost, it's the hardest thing to get back. And it makes it hard to kind of be in relationships, because how can you trust somebody in a relationship that it just makes it 100 times more difficult. So you have to really work at it in order to make sure that the relationship kind of pans out the way that you want it to. So to reiterate, in working together and to build this relationship back after infidelity, restore communication, new agreements and boundaries have to be put in place, emotional and physical reconnection. And that may take time. It's not something that will happen overnight. It's not something that is going to happen in a blink of an eye. And one person may want it to happen quicker than the other, especially when it comes to like getting intimate. They want to have that connection back to make sure that, that they're good, they feel whole. But once that trust is gone, sometimes it takes a minute to kind of get back into that space. Commitment. If it's going to therapy, having therapy goals. If it's having a once a week meeting to just check in with each other, to just see where things is going, to have that open communication and kind of just follow through. You definitely want to be able to follow through. So just to reiterate, I know I said that before. I love the word reiterate. I love the word. Just reiterate or to recap. Do you do what I do? Do you put trust in the beginning with restrictions, and you trust them as far as you can throw them, or do a person have to earn your trust? Trust is built on consistency, vulnerability, and respect. And it's a possibility that it can be built or rebuilt after betrayal. Sometimes, and I've seen relationships come back from the brink of divorce and go another 2-3 years, fall out again, and then go another 2-3 years. But then I see the betrayal happen and there's nothing else after that. They learn their lesson and then, they keep on going. Some of those, and then I've seen relationships where it just doesn't happen at all. Or maybe it happened, but I don't know anything about it. But I've seen good relationships, I've seen healthy relationships and everything. What I will say to you is, if you are going to be in a committed relationship and the opportunity, or you feel communication erode, or you feel the intimacy is missing, have that check-in. Have that conversation. And if you really are involved in this relationship, go to therapy. Make it work, especially if it's somewhere that you want to be. You can't force somebody to love you, can't force somebody to be with you. But if it's somewhere that you really want to be, then yes, have that conversation. Yes, go ahead and put that in place. Now, in the event that there's an opportunity for either party that is loving on someone else after being in this committed relationship, marriage, or the like, before the action is taken, if you really want to be involved in a relationship, again, have that over communication, have that reassurance, have that everything. There are signs before it happened, but one person had told me, one married couple told me that your relationship has to be intentional. Your actions have to be intentional, consistent, conscious. You can't have a fulfilling relationship without those attributes. I want to hear your thoughts. Make sure you drop it in the chat. I want to hear your stories, how you overcame. Let me know. And if you tell me your story and you would like me to share it, just go ahead and shoot it to our email and I'll share it in one of the next episodes. I'll catch y'all on the next go around. Peace.